first thing I want to talk about, of course, this happened over the weekend. They tried to, the Seahawks tried to have it come in last minute on a Friday as not even big news, not a big deal. But he got traded to the Seahawks, and the Seahawks gave up a lot to get him. And the NFC West looks like the most insane division in the world. So, did the Hawks give up too much for Jamal Adams?
Okay. Before we get into that, something that just popped into my head. It's like, well, what did other teams offer? Because everyone, if you were a gambling man, you would say he's going to the Cowboys for a lot of reasons. Because first of all, NFC West is incredibly competitive. So if you want to win, everyone wants a Super Bowl ring. If you want to win, everyone knows the easiest division is the NFC East. Everyone knows that the Cowboys were salivating over Jamal Adams. So how did they not land him? Then I'm thinking, does this tie into Dak Prescott and the way that Jerry Jones is treating Dak Prescott? When he's messing around with his money. Jamal Adams, he's kind enough to say that he will forego, negotiations for now if he's on the right team. Cowboys are definitely a great fit for him and a great situation. Could it be that he foresaw Jerry Jones, when it comes time to break out the checkbook, pulling a Dak Prescott and treating him like that? That's why these owners, you have to treat your players right. It's there's a lot more implications when you mess around with the players' money, and if you're not player friendly.
You're absolutely right, but then again, you have to think about, first of all, the Cowboys, they can't afford anything. Like they're paying Amari Cooper a ton of money. They're paying Ezekiel Elliott a lot of money. No matter what, they're paying Dak a lot of money. Their offensive line is expensive. Their defensive line is expensive. They have no money left, and they have players that they have to sign later. The Cowboys have no money left. At least with the Seahawks, they had something. They're only playing Russell Wilson, so he's pretty much the only person they're playing. But at the same token, the Seahawks just they rented Clowney for a year, and they weren't willing to pay him, even though he was huge for them. So, and that's another thing too, is like what makes Jamal Adams a good fit for this team? Like, he's an amazing player, but he played in an absolutely different system.
We talked about that earlier. Is Jamal Adams, did he benefit from the scheme in New York? I want to say yes, because they were a great defense, especially stopping the run, and they definitely used him to stop the run. But you look at Jamal Adams on tape, and some of that stuff, actually a lot of that stuff, is just, it has to be him. And his football IQ. Not only his athleticism, but his football IQ, because he does things that I've seen him do crazy things. Of course, he destroyed the Giants. He single-handedly destroyed Daniel Jones.
Oh,
Daniel Jones was going for a quarterback sneak. Jamal Adams jumps over the line, gets behind Daniel Jones, and pulls him back. Like, I've just never seen things like that. He's always looking to strip the ball, to get the ball. It's some things you can't teach. I know his father was an NFL player, and he grew up. I love players that grow up in the sport, because they're football. There are things you can't teach at the NFL level. Like, you kind of have to develop that education from a young age, and he's got it.
Right, and he's just one of the most instinctual players that you'll see, and it's ridiculous, all the things that he's done, but all the things they let him get away with. He kind of plays a little bit like Troy Polamalu, where he's just flying all over the place. He kind of does what he wants, and will that work in a scheme in Seattle where they run a cover 3 and everyone has to kind of be in the right place at the right time?
Okay. I think he has this instinct for the line of scrimmage. So I think cover 3 suits him, because what's he going to be responsible for? The tight ends? I've seen this guy. He handles tight ends. And when it's the safety blitz.
George Kittle.
This is another reason why I think Seattle went all in on him, because they really don't have a choice. Because you look at San Francisco, they have to play twice a year with the best running game in the NFL. And the best tight end in the NFL. And then you have to face Arizona twice a year with the second most mobile quarterback in the league. So they really didn't have a choice.
Yeah, and they got to play the Rams, and all high power offenses, all just all these crazy schemes, and you need someone smart who's going to come in and do the damn job, basically.
No, and as fast as he is, I mean, I've seen him chase guys down, downfield. Even though he's not a free safety, he's not going to be asked to play deep. You got the cornerbacks and you got the free safety responsible for the deep ball. He's really responsible for the middle of the field,
Right.
and to get to the line of scrimmage when it's a handoff, and go in on the quarterback blitzes when he's called to do so. I think this suits Jamal Adams to a T.
I was hoping you weren't going to say that, but I agree with you.
Okay.
He's damn good. He's going to be everywhere. He's basically going to be a rover on a defense. He's going to be that unpredictable guy that you really can't account for on a defense that makes it really hard to scheme.
He's going to have to be the one. I mean, I remember watching old Lawrence Taylor, games where it's like if the quarterback. I remember once they called a timeout because they couldn't find Lawrence Taylor. Like you have to know where he is, or you're not running the play. And turns out Lawrence Taylor was on the bench, like he was sitting out. But he is that kind of player where if you have to know where he is because he might line up, pretty close to the line of scrimmage. And if that's the case, get rid of that ball very quickly.
Right. If he's lining up as a blitzing linebacker, you have to account for that. But at the same time, I've seen him line up, like he's going to be blitzing off the edge, and then he drops back and he's intercepting passes. I've seen people try to bait him. He literally got an interception on a play against the Steelers, and then the Steelers try to scheme against that because it's like, okay, he's lining up in the same position. We're going to try to run a screen to his side, and they literally bailed out. They did a block and release for their tight end, and they were hoping that Jamal Adams was going to blitz. Lo and behold, he sees the coverage, he reads the screen, drops back, and literally stuffed the screen because they had nowhere to go because he read the play immediately.
No, that's where the football IQ comes in, and his athleticism is, I mean, it's just top notch. His speed. I mean, he was a converted running back at some point. I think he was a running back in his life, and his father was the one who talked him out of it. His father was a running back for the Giants who had some serious injuries, and that's why I think he got his son to not be a running back because that's kind of just I don't want to say it's suicidal, but it's a tough position. You're going to get beat to hell.
Yeah.
He uses his brain, and he's got the speed. He's got the strength. He is a tackler. You're not getting away from him. Once he gets a hand on you, it's not letting go. And he'll tackle the tight ends. He doesn't shy away from the tight ends.
He'll tackle anyone. He'll blow up anyone. He'll run straight into the offensive line. He's a gamer. But
and the Rams, that's one thing they still have. They have their tight ends, and I think they're going to use their tight ends a lot. So I mean, Jamal Adams was just a must. The first thing you asked was, did they give up too much? I'm going to say no. 2 first-round picks. A lot of times I would say yes because I'm like, first-round pick, you just replace him with a young talent of that level. That's not going to happen.
Right.
The next safety class, first of all, if you want to win this year, it's not an option. And next year, the safety class is not – you just don't have that. If you had Isaiah Simmons coming out next year, maybe. Then maybe. But other than that, like I don't see the safety class being anywhere near his level. And there's a couple of good ones. Kid from FSU, the Hamza Nasir El-Din, I think his name is. He's very good, but he's just nowhere near this level.
Yeah, you actually make a good point. And I was thinking, like with this coming up draft, this is the perfect year to trade all your draft picks because you don't know if there's going to be a college football season. You don't know when they're going to play. You don't know who's going to play. You don't know who's going to sit out. So it's almost like you're going in blind. So there are the tried and true, like you're definitely drafting them, in the top 10. You got your Trevor Lawrences and stuff like that. You're drafting them top. But there's going to be a lot of players that would have had their draft stock rise, but they're not going to be able to do that. And it's going to be a lot of blind pointing, hoping and wishing that you're going to get a good player, especially at the end of the draft, which is where the Seahawks hope to be drafting. So
then which again, I think that's a good thing because you really have to evaluate the players when the virus permits us to do so, rather than rely on maybe a fluke breakout year, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
But you know how it is when someone just has a breakout year. It's like, oh my God, now he's a first-round pick. Whereas if there was no season, you probably would have gotten him in the 5th round. So the talent isn't going to disappear. It's going to be there. It's just how are you going to find it?
Right. I still just looking at it on paper, it does look like a lot especially the Seattle. has been known to not lock up players. They spent way too much on Adams to not lock him up, and they're going to have to give him a ton of money. It's probably going to be $17 million a year, and that's going to, between him, Russell Wilson, and they have a couple other players that are high priced players. They're not going to have much cap room left. They're going to be a lot like the Rams, where they're going to have a lot of high priced players, and then a lot of just fill out the roster guys.
I don't think they're going to get in trouble like the Rams. They're looking pretty good on. They made some cuts, I think, today, probably in anticipation of this. But dude, they have like almost $19 million in cap space this year, which is pretty much the exact amount that Jadeveon Clowney wants.
This is true, and that's the thing too. And that's another thing you asked this question earlier. Who else was offering? What were other teams offering for the Seahawks to offer this much? 2 first-round picks, third-round pick, and a starting safety. That's
and McDougal is serviceable. It's not a bad safety.
Not bad.
He's serviceable.
He had more interceptions last year than Jamal Adams had in his entire career.
I mean, everyone knows Seattle's defense, especially when you get into that secondary, was kind of like meh, kind of like average. And I don't know how they did so well with that defense.
They were very like the thing is they have a transcendent middle linebacker. Oh my gosh, what's his name? I'm forgetting his name, but their linebacker is absolutely fantastic. And they have a scheme that they've been running for a long time. So,
I just Googled Seattle MLB, and of course I got the Mariners. Like, no, middle linebacker.
So, and that's the thing. The Seahawks.
Oh, Bobby Wagner you're talking about?
Bobby Wagner. Yes. Yeah. I don't know how his name sits up like 12. I'm sorry. I slipped on his name for a hot second. I've been playing way too much Madden. Bobby Wagner, long retired. So they have still a good base. They have veterans that know the scheme, and their linebackers are some of the best in the league. Their defensive line is above average. Their secondary, they have at least one good secondary guy. But they weren't that good in the secondary. But now they're like a top 10 secondary just with Jamal Adams alone. So it's going to be interesting because a lot of teams made a lot of moves on defense and trying to play catch up with the 49ers, which is
49ers really, this last year they kind of came from out of nowhere and all of a sudden appeared as like just a dominant team. It's like, oh, we should be afraid of this team. We should. Mm-hmm. It's the defense. Let's not even talk about what the Niners got going on offense now with the speed at wide receiver all over the field.
Right.
And then there's Kittle. And then there's the running game. So
exactly. It's like all of a sudden all these teams are trying to prepare for the 49ers. You had Arizona drafting the Clemson kid that you just mentioned.
Oh, Isaiah Simmons. Yeah. Oh, lucky for them. Jesus.
Exactly. So like Isaiah Simmons literally landed in their lap too. And then you have
I had a feeling he would, but
you had the Rams getting Jalen Ramsey, so he could just be that number one corner that stops everyone in this pass happy division. And then you have now the Seahawks getting Jamal Adams. Everyone is trying to load up on defense because that's where San Francisco killed a lot of teams with the defense. So and just with the crazy schemes that's all over this division, it's going to be ridiculously difficult to keep up. So you have to have game changers and game breakers, and Jamal Adams is probably the best game breaker on defense in this year's NFL.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be Aaron Donald, it used to be Khalil Mack for a hot minute.
Right.
Still worried about them, but no, yeah, this was, I think, a no-brainer for Seattle. The point you made about the way the draft is going to go next year, there may or may not be a college season, and it's definitely going to be limited. Mm-hmm. So you're going to need to really evaluate players anyway, and you have your first round talent that I think is well established now. Fine, there are players that are going to be in the 4th, 5th, 6th round that just didn't get to shine this year because of the
right. If you think about it, what if Joe Burrow, like, what if last year was the year that he was just transferring to LSU and he didn't have a chance to play his senior year and blow up like he did last year?
he's still the same player. He's still the same man. So.
Exactly. He would have been a 4th to 6th round pick if he came out last year. And if you just shifted everything a year forward, he would have been that same 4th or 5th round pick. And if they don't have a college football season, then he would have been going in as a unknown prospect instead of a number 1 pick that's supposed to be a savior for a franchise. That's awful. Sorry, Bengals fan, but you know your team's bad. And he would have just been, like basically left to the Wolves. And there's a lot of quarterbacks that I think we're going to showcase that they were in that upper echelon that aren't going to get into the Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence quarterback sweepstakes.
Yeah.
Like the kid from Georgia. He probably would have been there.
Jamie Newsome.
Yep.
Everyone's talking about Trey Lance from North Dakota. He really – I hope they don't cancel this game against Oregon. I think they've kind of have.
It's done. It's already
that was going to be his big test, was a legitimate – the only really legitimate team that they're going to play.
Which is funny saying Oregon has a legitimate team.
Oh, well, I mean –
their offense is good. Their defense is not good.
It's the best that North Dakota is going to face.
This is true.